Hey there, everyone. I'm Jovonni Christian, the host of the Beginning of the Never Ending podcast. Today, we've got an incredible story to share, the journey of Gianina Garcia, a Calo-Floridian mystical marketer. Yeah, I know. Sounds exciting, right? From challenging blended family upbringing, right, where she faced abuse and neglect, Gianina transformed into a highly educated goddess, a living example of what self-love's power can do. So, and guess what? We got an amazing piece by MKC. It's like a little tropical feel, handpicked by Gianina herself. Shout outs to her. But we want your help. We need your help, guys. Our podcast family is growing. We're aiming for 500 subscribers. Right now, we're at 174. So, drop your subscriber number in the chat below. Comment and join our community if you like what you see. And also, call on all the artists. If you want to feature, if you want to be featured, get your paintings shown on our stuff, message our moderators on Discord. You could be our next star. So catch us every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, on our After Dark channel. Head to our description for the link and join the fun. Thanks for our fantastic support. Thank you for everyone who's been chiming in. And without further ado, let's give it up for the incredible Gianina Garcia. Hello, what's up, everyone? How are you doing today? Welcome to the Beginning of the Never Ending. I'm very, very excited for this guest that we have on. And for those who don't know, this is the story of people. Our goal is to archive as many lives as possible. Just the people you walk by every day who add value to not only to our lives, but to yours as well, whether you may know it or not. So our goal is to jump into that. I have a really special guest, and I would like to introduce Miss Gianina Marina Garcia. Yep. And so for those who don't know, she's we'll call him long lost friend, but a really old friend that we've had for a very long time. We've been high school friends. And I'm really excited to kind of understand a little bit more about you. When you're in high school, you don't really you don't dive into that world. Yeah. So I think this is a really cool opportunity for us to kind of really get to learn a little bit more kind of like who you are and what made you to who, where you become. So yeah, without further ado, let's do into it. So where does it begin? Ethnicity, is that the right terminology? Ancestry? Where does it kind of start for you and your family?
So mom's side of the family is Filipino and Portuguese. My mom's paternal side is from the Philippines. They immigrated to Hawaii probably early 1900s, I would assume. The Portuguese side as well. There was a big Portuguese migration over to Hawaii, and because of developing the land, and the climate I learned happens to be very comparable from Portugal to Hawaii. So they probably got there around the same time. And then dad's side of the family is Mexican. I know his paternal side is full Mexican from Guadalajara, and the maternal side moved from Spain to Mexico.
Okay, so we're talking about like grandmother, grandfather, or are we talking about great
my great grandmother on my dad's side, right? My dad's maternal side, she was born in Mexico.
Wow.
But her parents were from Spain.
It's some people. It's hard to understand, but it's not that long ago.
It really
isn't.
Yeah.
To how fast things can just change. It's so cool.
Yeah, I never met this great grandmother, but I did meet one of the ones on my mom's side. I was probably maybe 7 or 8 when she passed away. So she, I knew her. She was not a nice lady, but I knew her. she was a cranky old woman. She lived a long life.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I take it that your great grandmother was from your grandmother's or grandfather's?
The one I knew?
Yes.
My grandmother.
Mm-hmm. Did she kind of have the same personality, that kind of creakiness too? Your grandmother?
It's funny. I went on a little family vacation to Hawaii this past month, and being around my grandmother, my mom, my aunts, and staying all under one roof for a week, it was really funny to see how certain things got triggered and their emotional responses and how quick they are with it. And I'm like, oh, that's where I get it from. It's just in my blood. So yeah, I would say so, but definitely not to that level.
Sure, right, okay.
My grandmother still loves me, and then I'm still her favorite.
Hey, you gotta love it, right? Your grandmother is she the Portuguese or Filipino? You mentioned that one was the Filipino.
My grandmother is the Portuguese.
Portuguese.
My grandfather, he passed away when I was probably like 10, and he was the Filipino side.
Your grandmother being kind of from Portuguese, you have a strong, like, Portuguese and Mexican are very different, but a little bit the same. You come from a different background. Does she carry a lot of that culture? Did she pass that a lot of that culture down, or was she more Hawaiian?
I think a lot of the culture that was passed down was mainly in the food. I don't speak any other language than English. Even Spanish is very limited. It wasn't really spoken to us in our household. It was spoken around us, but never really something that was taught. So I feel like all of the connection that I have to my past and to my roots is through food.
And you mentioned that you didn't get to gain any other languages. Was there a reason to that, or was it just more just because?
I think, well, I don't think anybody really spoke Portuguese. They just spoke English. It was like, as an immigrant, I think it was just something that you had to do.
You had to adapt.
You didn't speak another language. And in terms of the Filipino side, being on the same island, because it was like a huge population of Filipino people there.
Sure.
But that was for some reason never taught to my mom. She doesn't know Tagalog. So I don't know Tagalog. My dad was born and raised in Mexico, around like Tijuana. He speaks perfect English. Spanish. Spanish is his first language. But that was not passed down to me. And my grandmother would always say, like, why don't you teach her Spanish? And he would only talk to me in Spanish when she would say those things or when she was around. And he's like, why don't you know Spanish? I'm like, oh, I'm just going to automatically know.
It's like, yeah, I'm just going to adapt to it. We're going to gain it. I'm really curious here. You mentioned food was a big part of kind of like what was passed down. It seems like that was something that really stands out. You also mentioned that from your kind of grandfather's side, he kind of passed away. Did you get to experience that kind of Filipino food, or was it more just kind of the Portuguese and Mexican?
So when I was 5, I moved away from my Portuguese and Filipino family, and I would go back and visit every once in a while. So for the most part, no. But there are like little pockets of things that I do remember, like and things that my mom will cook to this day, like lumpia or pancit. And a big influence too is Hawaiian food kind of found its way and meshed into all the other food. So spam and rice is a huge staple, but that's just a Hawaii thing. That's just what you do. That's Hawaiian breakfast, spam, egg, and rice. And then maybe have some what they call vingadois. That's the Portuguese dish. It's basically like pickled pork. Like little things like that I remember, but that's as much as I have, as much flavor and like dish knowledge that I got.
You mentioned your mother was in Hawaii. How long do you remember? Do you know how long she was there?
She was born and raised.
Oh, okay, so she was there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Okay. And I take your father never he was born and raised in Mexico.
He was, pretty much. And then when he was older, I want to say it was sometime in high school, he moved to California. He moved to the States.
So I'm curious, how does, there's two very different worlds you're talking about here. Somehow finding their way to connect here.
So dad, after he graduated high school, he enlisted in the military, and he ended up getting based in Hawaii. And this is one of my favorite stories to tell. So how they met. Mom loved the military men. She was just like all about them. They just looked good to her. And one day, they're walking down, her and a friend, one of the aunts that I actually still know to this day, are walking down Waikiki Beach. And then one of my dad and one of his friends are walking in the opposite direction. And they cross each other, they see each other, and they're checking each other out. They keep walking, and then they turn around, and they're like, hey, you come here. No, you come here. And they just start flirting with each other like that on the strip, on Waikiki Strip. Probably like somewhere that I could still visit to this day.
Wow.
And yeah, that's how I got here.
That's amazing. That's super cool. So can you describe kind of your mom's personality?
Ooh, my mom's a free spirit. She's a lover and a fighter. She defends herself really, really well. She'll fight tooth and nail with you, but she does have a lot of love, and she's an amazing cook also. I wish I had an ounce of her pizzazz in the kitchen, but she's a very understanding woman. I think, but she first leads with her gut emotion. She doesn't really take time to think about her response as much. She just goes with her gut reaction.
She's really in tune with kind of called the EQ, right? So emotional, kind of like a knowledge of connecting with people, herself and others. Is that kind of what you mean?
I guess so. Like whenever if there's maybe something that I have a question about, I may ask other people if I want an emotionally intelligent response. Whereas if I just want to vent, or if I just want to maybe have someone that can be angry with me, Mom is the person to go to, because she'll call out certain injustices. She helps me walk through my emotions for sure, because in her having the same emotions with me, I get to see it in someone else, I think, and then it kind of gives me like a little rationale. And I think this is just a product of me being the oldest child and my mom actually being the youngest child. But I somehow feel more emotionally mature than her, even though she's my mom. Yeah.
I think the island life is different for sure. Where you're raised, do you think that does adds a factor to how she is in her personality? I know that from what I've maybe could be assuming here, California and Hawaii are somewhat similar, but I think something special about Hawaii has this sense of like really about traditions and that kind of spirit aspect of things. While kind of California, you kind of have this other side of where you have so many individuals, cultures are kind of clashing together all at one place. It's not so touristy. It's just suburban. Do you kind of feel like that kind of changed that's a part of why she is the way she is, or she's just like a special human being?
Could be. So I think, and it's really funny because Hawaii, as beautiful as it is country, or like a lot of the locals, I feel like they give me those like country vibes, not so much urban, even though there's cities and stuff around with, like you mentioned, huge tourist areas. They're very grounded people. The spirit of aloha is something that I think thrives there, but it's still very simplistic type of mentality. And I think my mom has always just been a firecracker. That's just her.
I love it.
Yeah.
Your father, can you describe him?
It's really difficult to describe Dad, because the ways that I remember him from when I was growing up versus the ways that I see him now, they contrast so much. When I was younger, and both of my parents were really young when I was born. They were 20 years old, so they were babies having a baby. Dad was a little bit more of a free spirit too. He for sure had more of a guidance system within himself. He had a really good head on his shoulders, and he was very diligent and disciplined type of man. He worked really hard, but I think he also knew how to have fun. And a man raising a girl is difficult already, but he kind of got to play with being a girl dad and also being a boy dad, because we would still wrestle. We would still rough house and pillow fight and things like that. It was a lot of fun, and I didn't play sports growing up, but he still would do some sporty aspects with me when he had time. Now, my dad, or at least when I was growing up, like when we were in high school and things like that, he became so much more authoritarian, much more of a strict man, much more of a I feel like somehow like his military roots just got stronger. And I understand to some degree, because it wasn't just me and him anymore. It was now his wife and his other kids that were coming along. So he had to kind of shape up as a man and be the protector, provider, head of household, all of that other good stuff. And I think that really weighed heavily on him, and it changed how he had to come off and portray himself. It was just two completely different people that I experienced.
Was it a switch, or was it more of like a gradual?
I think it was a little bit of both. It started gradually and then flipped. At least from my perspective.
Sure.
And me being the oldest, me being the daughter or the child of, someone else, he would go to work, right? He worked all day. His wife was stay-at-home mom, so he entrusted her to take care of the kids, right? But she was not the mother to me that I needed. She was essentially more of just like a babysitter.
Sure.
And when Dad would come home, he's tired. He doesn't have the energy to give to me.
Yeah.
But I still need my attention from my parent. Eventually, as I'm getting older and I'm becoming a young adult, and certain things are being expected of me, or just from the household, like chores, or from school, or things like that, the rift between us just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was also really difficult because my mom and my dad and stepmom, they were not on speaking terms either. So
you were kind of caught in the middle.
Exactly. I was estranged, essentially, or kept away from my birth mother, and then did not receive the attention and care and affection and understanding from my father.
You mentioned that you have a brother?
I'm actually the only one from my two parents.
Right.
But I have 6 brothers and sisters. Yeah. I have 2 brothers and a sister on dad's side. 2 brothers and a sister on mom's side. On dad's side, one of my brothers is my stepbrother, so it's my stepmom's son from another relationship, and then they had 2 kids together. Very blended family.
You're you one of the things I heard from that, what you were explaining, is that you use this term a lot, oldest. I'm the oldest. Yeah. It's like something that's interesting. First, before that happened, can you describe yourself as a kid? Who is Gianina? You mentioned you had this first father. I'm sorry to break it up like this, but were you able to kind of really have 2 free spirit parents? And sure, he worked hard, he did his thing, but he wrestled with you. Like, can you describe kind of the personality that you had when you were younger? I guess prior to that separation.
There's not a lot that I really remember about myself, but for sure I've heard stories, and I remember having just a blast all the time, regardless of what parent I was with. I just remember having a lot of fun and being a very carefree type of child. I always just knew like I'm taken care of. Even with my parents, who they're young single parents, from like about the time I was 5 years old, I was either living with mom or living with dad. I would go back and forth between the California coast or the Florida coast, moving back and forth. 1 year with dad, 1 year with mom, for about maybe 4, 5, 6 years. But I just always trusted that I was taken care of. And when dad would go to work and I would stay with my grandmother or my aunt or whoever, I was very carefree. Loved to just go outside, play with my cousins, or play with my dolls. I was very, very content.
So this I find so surprising. It seems like they had a good relationship. You mentioned that during the time of growing up, there was a point where they kind of like had kept you from being able to go to Florida and being able to kind of do that. Is that I don't want to say stop, but you mentioned that there was kind of a thing of like kind of keeping you in California, keeping you stable as you're.
Yeah. So about 6th grade is when my dad had settled with his life, his new wife,
Okay.
his family was starting to grow. And so he thought it was in my best interest, especially starting in higher levels of school, to, like you said, be more stable. And I was ready for that. I didn't want to keep starting over and having new friends, because even though I was not only going from California to Florida every other year, they were moving around too. Dad would be in San Diego, San Francisco, LA. Mom was in Fort Lauderdale, and then another part of Fort Lauderdale, and then Orlando. So it was just constant change up until 6th grade. And that's when I started over here at Heritage Intermediate. We moved to Fontana. And we decided to be stable. And that's when I think the switch happened. It was suddenly, as much as it was stable, it was not, it just wasn't giving enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't giving me the balance that I needed.
Where's the you mentioned friends, right? Was that any kind of childhood stable friends that you were like at least able to start building hopefully during this time? Because one of the things I find, especially going from kind of like the elementary, but once you get to middle school, this is where things start shifting a little bit, especially kind of like the way you start seeing yourself.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, okay, all right. You start think you're poised differently.
You're so cool.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I'm not a kid no more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You start making, and we had this like roller rink and all this other crazy stuff we had, right? Did friends help you kind of, because you're missing that kind of parental kind of love that you were yearning for? You also kind of, I imagine, missing mom as well, and you get to spend time with them. Did you get to have any kind of friends that were able to help you share that, give energy to be able to?
Well, to go back to your original question about like keeping, they wouldn't keep me from mom necessarily, but they definitely limited contact. The house phone was like usually put away for some reason, or if like let's say I wanted to spend school breaks with mom, that was something that they had to really discuss and make sure that was okay. And their reasoning for that was that every time I came back from something like that, I had a different air about me. I had a certain attitude. And I never understood, and I wish I had maybe found something concrete or like had a moment of like, oh, I see what they're saying. But I never understood what that meant, or what they couldn't even really give me an example from what I remember. But when it came time to start making friends, middle school was really tough. It seemed like people already had their friends. And it seemed that there was a lot of moving around. But there's people that I talk to this day that I met in middle school, and I feel like I wasn't as close to them in middle school or high school, but I still know them. And so I do feel some sort of connection there.
But it took time.
It did. At least 6th and 7th grade. In 8th grade, I met my best friend. Do you remember Brianna?
Of course.
Yeah, that's my best friend right there. Shout out.
Shout out to
Shout out, babe. We met in 8th grade. We had the same homeroom in whatever switch class. And we just became best friends ever since. And that made my high school experience so much better. The thing that kept me living in California, even though home life was really starting to become very toxic and very traumatic, I wanted to stay because of my friends, because I had these different people, these different roots, and I felt like they understood me, because somehow we had a very similar home life, with difficulties in expressing ourselves or feeling understood, very strict parents, and just wanting to explore a certain side of ourselves. I guess you could call it the rebellious phase, but having to do that very, very under wraps and be super secretive about it almost, because for the fear of just being uber punished. I remember there was one time I got grounded for 3 months. Yeah. And that's
a long time.
Yeah, that's a long ass time.
For high school, that's a long time.
Yeah. And it was in high school too. I think it was in my sophomore year. I was grounded for 3 months, and what that meant in my household was you go to school, you come home, you don't do anything else. When you're home, you are in your room. There's no television, no radio. All I could have was books. Yeah, for 3 months.
What was it? A good reason?
No. No, it was literally probably just my dad had decided. He told me, he's like, you're too old for me to spank you, and there was I think there had been a couple things prior to that I got grounded for maybe a couple weeks or a month for, and then he was like, all right, well, 3 months it is. Let's see if you learn your lesson this time.
It felt like there's actually, before I go into this world, can you describe what was it about kind of Brianna that brought you two together? You mentioned there was this kind of, you guys both had this kind of can you describe who Brianna was to you, and what was kind of your relationship and how important that was at that time, and her personality and how it meshed with your personality, and just kind of that spirit there?
I feel like she really just brought me out of my shell a lot. She taught me a lot. She was the one who taught me how to do certain things with my hair, how to do my makeup. It was almost like she was the big sister that I never had, even though I'm older than her by a few months. She just really taught me so much. And then of course we were both very silly together. When it was just us two, and we there was no judgment from between either of us. From boys to teachers to parents, it was just, we were always on the same wavelength, and I felt like I could always just be myself with her.
We're okay. So you mentioned this kind of dynamic. I'm just trying to get the final picture here. It felt like there was a battle of control. I'm gonna insinuate just a little bit, so please correct me here. I just want to make sure I'm following along. But when you would go home back to Florida, I call it home, right? In that sense, when you go to Florida and spend some time with your mom, when you would come back, you would have this kind of free spirit, this sense of you can kind of take over the world, and you just got rejuvenated, kind of have your cup filled in a way.
Yeah.
But when you would come back, it seems like your father felt like he had lost a little bit of control, being able to kind of, hey, you do this, you kind of the I don't want to call it the military way, but in that dynamic, which is hey, this is what I need you to do. And you're not that person. You're more fluid now. You know what it feels like to be free. You know what it feels like to have that. So to be kind of put in a box, you're like, why? When I can be you know?
Yeah.
Like I saw the world already. It's like having your eyes open, and then someone's like, no, I need you to stay in the cup. Is it more of that kind of process going on? And do you feel like there was some outside pressure maybe coming from your stepmother, or do you just feel like it was just he was just really stressing out, just kind of he was unfortunately taking it on you?
Well, first of all, that's very insightful, because I never really thought about it that way, of him losing that sense of control, but it does make sense. And when I think about it, and I guess in terms of the ways that like I was treated, right, with my mom, or when I would go visit her, and I was essentially getting spoiled because A, I hadn't seen her for a while, and B, because she didn't really have any other kids at the time. She was just kind of riding solo. It was just, I guess, a different experience versus coming back into a house of, 3 other kids, and then two just very different type of parents. I had never really considered it that way. When I say that coming back into the house, it didn't always feel like home. Mm-hmm. Even before, like, I would go visit mom, it always felt like there was some, I think I would chalk it up to being like a black sheep. Mm-hmm. So, and there's just little things here and there. And I don't want to, like, because I feel like I go to this example all the time. But my little brothers, they shared a bedroom. They got their twin mattresses and their bedroom set, things like that. And then my little sister, she was a baby, so she had her own little room. She had her crib, her bedroom set. I was still sleeping on an air mattress after they had all got all that. And I remember that was a few months of that happening. And they had, like, bedroom sets from, like, IKEA and, like, cute little things. When it came to me, I remember asking my dad. We had gone out shopping for a few things, and I remember asking him, I'm like, when can I get a mattress? Or what do I have to do to earn a mattress or something like that? And he was like, well, it's not so much like that you don't earn it or that you don't deserve it. It's just going to take time or something along those lines. And then when I did get one, it was like from one of these like little mattress stores somewhere over here in Fontana, and it was propped up with a box spring and then like a little, I don't know, it was something on wheels, like a frame but not like a full frame.
I understand exactly what you're talking about.
And then hand-me-down dressers and things like that. And so I feel like there was a lot of little things like that happening. And then if I would come home from mom's with like new clothes and stuff like that, I didn't know this at the time, but I learned later that my dad would take some of those clothes. Like if he didn't like it or if he didn't think that it was like appropriate for me to be wearing, he would essentially like give them away or something. And when I learned about that when I was older, I asked him about it, and I'm like, why would you take my clothes? He's like, I've been doing this since you were little. Don't tell me how to raise my daughter. So there was a lot of like things that felt injustice or imbalanced or even just like a lack of boundaries. I remember there was another time, because I'm the oldest and I have all these little siblings, right? And they're coming into my room when I'm at school and messing things up. So I remember I asked for a lock. One day I locked my door, and I think my dad got upset with something, and he was like, no, you're not going to lock doors in my house. And he ends up taking my doorknob off. And that was another huge thing of like you mentioned, control and just lack of boundaries and lack of personal space that I just had to deal with because it was his house, his rules.
I'm gonna insinuate here, in just a little bit. like I explained in the beginning of the show, that we were friends at one point in time, and I don't know how, but you did a really good job of like not showing like what you were going through. You there was a sense of, obviously there was something that would be going on, but like we thought it would just be like class or school or whatever is going on. You'd never know what's going on in someone else's life or what's going on in someone else's home or someone else's head. And who's the outlet? Like, who are you, like who's the support? Like, where's like someone trying to, I mean, I hate to say like the savior here, but more of like just like someone you could just reason through, talk this through, figure out like what's going on. Is there anyone you can kind of, I don't want to just say, I know you're saying your friend, but more of like a teacher, mentor, someone.
Well, before all of that, what I really learned after a few years was that family could see things happen, or like they had their own opinions about what was going on and how I was essentially being treated, and they never really said anything, and that really upset me, because I think like it's not fair, and I get it, you don't want to step on people's toes, you don't want to insert yourself into certain things and cause more of a fuss or arguments, but I do wish someone had, like, within the family, within the household at least, or something like that, would have stepped up and said something, because then I at least know, like, okay, it's not just me and I'm not just crazy. Once I got into high school, I think it was my sophomore year, I started working for one of the teachers. Her name was Miss Pacheco, and she had 2 kids. Do you remember her?
Yeah.
Yes. So she...
Wow.
She had 2 kids, and I would tutor them after school. So essentially, like, help them with homework, make sure they got their assignments done, did their reading, and if they had, tests coming up, I would help them study. The better their grades were, for every A, essentially, she would pay me a little bonus, and then by the hour, she also paid me. And it was like maybe like 2 or 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday after school. So it was easy peasy job. But she took me under her wing, and she was just so understanding. She was someone who allowed me to be who I was. And I think school was somewhere where I was allowed to be who I was, even though that was something that I was still learning. But with my friends, with my teacher, with my cousins, those were the people who really saw the real G and would allow it. And that was really all that I really wanted from my household. But I don't think it was something that I could ever be understood for or even really appreciated. There was a weird feeling of resentment in my household.
Can I want to ask, resentment for who you were, resentment for that you existed? So, sorry, I don't want to, I'm just curious.
That's a deep question. It could be both. I really think it could be both, because if it was, if it's,
had nothing to do with you, or is it?
I think if it had, I guess, been a different situation, like maybe, let's say, I was the daughter of someone else, right? But maybe my mom had passed away or something. I feel like that would have been less of a burden for my dad and my stepmom. But my mom was always inserting her 2 cents because, like I said, she's a lover and a fighter. She's going to say what's on her mind, and she's going to look out for her cub. The other side of that coin was, I think, also me being a little bit, I'll admit sometimes I was a brat. I'll admit sometimes I got really annoyed with my new family. I'm not saying I was a perfect child by any means, but I think there was a lot that could have been just like oil off the back.
Easily
kind of.
avoided.
Yeah, exactly. Like just just given another like breath and been like, okay, Gianina, whatever, roll your eyes and move on.
Sure.
But I actually did get an apology from my stepmom and my dad really recently when I got back here. The thing that I got an apology from my stepmom was we were at a party, and like a family party, and she would happen to be talking to somebody and talking about how her dad would never let her out of the house and like do fun things, and then she related that back to me and was like, oh, you know, like I know we were really strict with you, and we didn't, you know, there was a lot learning now, like after our other kids have grown up, that we could have given you more leeway with, or we could have given you more freedom with, and I'm sorry about that. And that was really nice to hear. There's still a lot more that I think I would like to hear from her, but that was a really nice first step. And then with Dad, he apologized like as a whole. He was like, I don't understand. He's like, I don't know how I was such a great dad when I didn't have help, and then when I got help and I was able to, you know, be stable and have you in a stable household, I don't know why I wasn't as good of a dad then. And, you know, he made his mention that he'll try to make it up to me, and wants to mend our relationship, all of that other good stuff. Oh, but then we got to backtrack now, because it's the whole reason why I left California to go to Florida.
We're drinking a toast of water here. Intervention of toast of water. Like, my God. Okay, so.
Shrink.
Okay, so.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. You answered it perfectly. So one of the things I was gonna ask was kind of why now, but I think I want to just do one touch of high school before we kind of move past that. And that's gonna be a really hard question, so that's why I want to have a toast of water. I was hinting towards something. Father and daughter relationships are like really important, because one of the things it teaches you kind of like what to look for in kind of a man. What was your kind of relationship with love kind of going through high school? You mentioned that like with Brianna, you guys would talk about boys and that kind of aspect as well. Because you had such a hard relationship, did you try to find it somewhere else, or was it more of like you were just so focused on just like, I don't want to make a mistake, I don't want to get out of like the boundaries of where I'm supposed to be?
So I was raised in a very Christian household once my parents got married, and basically from middle school onward, they were on their holy roller phase. Listened to only Christian radio stations and went to church a couple times a week. Very involved in the church at one point, but then all of these other things at home were still happening with me and like in my relationship with my dad. So I think that not only affected my relationship in terms of like love and learning what boundaries are, learning what protection providing is, but then it also affected my relationship with God and spiritually, because it was so strange and honestly just delusional, and for me to see all of these things being preached and taught and practiced, and having a godly mindset, and then turning it around and not really showing that same grace or that same forgiveness, that same patience, that same, you know, there was always some excuse when it came to me or my mom or things that were happening in our life.
Were you able to ask questions?
No. No. Well, like
I was like, whoa.
Well, because that's another really great perception that you have. No, I think a lot of times it was, you did this. It was an accusation, and it was not innocent until proven guilty, or even hearing me out. And it wasn't just me. I think my little brother had that same experience, because he's 6 years younger than me, my stepbrother. And then the other ones are 10 years younger than me, and then 12 years. So there's pretty big gaps. You did this. you're punished. That's it. And if you try to explain yourself, you're talking back. Does that hit a nerve?
Yeah. That's like, um, if you're not able to voice opinions, right?
Or even just stand up for yourself.
Right. Yeah. And this is what people are telling what love is almost, right? Like this is like kind of obviously in the Christian church we talk a lot about like God is love, right? And you're being kind of like some really tough, more than tough love, you know? So it was just essentially the love that you were able to receive was coming from more from friends and coming from your teachers and your mother when you would go and see her. Did you get to feel any of that from your father?
You know, there's a lot of memories that I don't have of Dad during that time, and whether it was because of us being, you know, just not having that personal time together. I think the one big thing that I remember of us like interacting was when we were involved in the church. We were involved in a play, and he played my predator, which I think is actually very fitting now that I think about it. But no, going back to the whole not being able to speak up for yourself or voice your opinion, it kind of teaches you that you have to question your own voice instead of trusting your own voice, trusting your own gut. You know, someone else's thoughts or perspective is more valid than your own. And then there was also like, I think, a level of gaslighting in there too, that, or maybe not gaslighting, maybe some gaslighting, but I think overall refusal to understand and compromise. You know, it was just more of that, like, do you remember that scene in Matilda, like, I'm big, you're small, I'm smart, you're dumb? It was very much that energy.
Can I be devil's advocate?
Yeah.
Do you feel like he was just trying to have you be grateful for kind of the situation and you know, kind of what's going on? Because, you know, you are kind of in California, you know, you sounds wild on what I'm about to say, but like, you know, you have a kind of a place over your head, you have a, you know, place to stay, you have food, you know, like in the military, right? Because I come from a military background, right? That is like a dream, you know, like having a bed, somewhere to sleep, hot food, whatever the case may be. Do you feel like that in his mind, that's what he was seeing? Just like, you know, she should be kind of grateful for what she has and what's going on. She shouldn't ask for more. She should be. Is it, or do you kind of, do you think it was just, again, that kind of just outside pressure of everything?
No, I think that that makes a lot of sense, and in a lot of ways, I think from what I remember and recall from our conversations, my dad did try to teach me things, but the way that he went about teaching me was not the way that I was going to learn. It was just not something that I was going to pick up. For example, he thought teaching me money management was me buying all of my personal things, and that included shampoo and toothpaste and my own toothbrush once I started working. At one point, I think I didn't even have a shower curtain or like a shower rod, and he was like, well, you have money, go budget it out. But it's part of his house. So there was a lot that I think like he kind of went overboard with. But I agree, and I've thought about this too, is that he is not only stressed and he has his whole family that he has to take care of, and just being the type of man that he is and how he was raised and the things that he had to endure, I for sure think he was doing the best that he could with what he knew at the time.
Right.
But what was just weird and so foreign to me was how we had such a good relationship prior.
Yeah.
Because if it was the same for my entire life, it wouldn't have been a thing. It would have just been dad and what I knew. But because there was suddenly a switch at some point, that's where I fought it, and I just rebelled against it. And I didn't even rebel that much. It was more of just like I felt it, and I felt this misunderstanding, and again, the resentment, the pain, and feeling like I didn't have a home, essentially. That I just had a house that I lived in. But to your point, I do think that now that I'm older, now that I am a little bit more understanding and I can take a step back from it, I think he was doing the best he could with what he knew.
Life after high school. What's the vision? What's the world look like? Are you excited? It's like, okay, graduation. All right. Finally, chance to be free, or was there like a opportunity or plan, or what was kind of?
So, I don't know if you remember this. I didn't finish high school at Etowanda.
Yeah, I do.
You do. So that Christmas vacation before senior year ended, that's when we had our big fight. And then I ended up being sent to live with mom in Florida. So I had to start all over again. My plans while I was in California weren't really panning out anyway. I had applied to Berkeley, and that was the school that my dad went to. So I wanted to try to follow in his footsteps a little bit there, make him proud. But I didn't get accepted. My second choice was, I think, San Diego. Didn't get accepted there. I got accepted to Cal State San Bernardino. And that was way too close to home for me.
Right.
So I was like, we're going to have to find something else. But ended up, and I was going to probably accept that anyway and figure something out later. But we didn't even make it that far. Come Christmas break, I'm already planning to go visit my mom for those 2 weeks. The big fight ensues. My 2-week bag ends up being my clothes for the next month and a half until he finally sends me my things. And then I started the school year, in the rest of my senior year in Florida, where I met one of my other best friends. But that process, it was more of just like, okay, I know I'm going to college. I don't know what I'm going for. And I know that I want to go to a good school. I don't know anything about these schools over here. So it was a little rough at that time. But I think because my training for it from my early years of kind of picking up and starting over and just rolling with it, that's just what I did. I didn't really have the ability to stop and think. It was just like, all right, what are we doing next?
Was it like a perfect storm? Almost? Like you mentioned that you kind of had this huge fight, but it pulls you to kind of a new world, a familiar one, back in Florida. Was it a kind of a chance to restart, or at the time did it feel like it was all kind of just? I don't want to say fucked.
I felt like my life had imploded at that moment. But now I think it was probably the best thing for me because I think everyone needs to like move away from home. And the younger, the better, honestly. Like if you can move away from home, like after high school or after college, do it because you're going to experience more of the world. Not everyone thinks the same way that they think here in the IE. And then coming back here as an adult, I'm like, I don't like the IE that much. I'm so sorry about it. And it's my hometown too, but I really don't. So there's a lot of things that you need to experience. You need to experience other cultures, other places, other people. Every different cities have their own different type of energy and their own pace. And I think that's something that people need to explore. Right. And then, again, the younger the better because you're more open to it. You're open-minded. Your mind is still absorbing. And so you can have a broader outlook on life in general. Moving to Florida was great because now I was living with the free-spirited parent. And I got to spread my wings and get involved in more of life, so to speak.
What would you like to do for fun? What was kind of like, okay?
The beach. I was so tan. Oh my gosh. My first year living in Florida, I hit the beach all the time. And I was bronze. I think I have there was a time where I came back for a little bit to do some family photos, and I was caramel color. But it was the best because it just felt like the ocean had cleansed and carried so much of all of that pain and just washed it away. It was still a new environment to get used to. When I started high school, the best friend that I have now from Florida, it's no secret she did not like me when I first showed up. Do you remember, like, because in California, here at Etowanda, the girls would go to school all dressed up, wear their heels, we had our rockabilly people, we had our, real classy looking girls, and it was just like a fashion show all the time. Me and Brianna would go shopping to find things to wear that would be like super cute. So then going to Florida, it was not like that. People were wearing sweatpants and slides with socks to school, and I show up first day.
Glamour.
Yeah. Hair done, makeup done, heels on, and everybody's like, who is this? Why is she wearing heels to school? I'm like, I did not do my homework on where I am.
Sure.
But it was still a really fun experience, and now she loves me. Now she's my best friend. But Emily did not like me when I first got out there.
Shout out to Emily.
Shout out to Emily.
What do you kind of feel like is the difference between your friend Emily versus kind of Brianna? I know it's so hard not to compare your friends or which you like better. We're not going to answer that question. But more of just kind of like the culture difference that you notice from Florida versus California.
It's really funny because they're both Virgos.
Oh, okay.
Emily is an August Virgo, and Brianna is a September Virgo. Brianna is she has more, I think, of a protective energy. She feels more like a big sister.
Big sister, yeah, sure.
If I have things that I want some emotional intelligence from, I can go to her. Emily is my wild friend, but I think that just has more to do with how they were raised. I don't think it has so much to do with where they were raised.
Sure.
Because Broward is different. Broward County is very different. You have you just have a different vibe out there.
Okay.
You know? It's a party vibe out there. You're right there next to Fort Lauderdale and Miami. Like, you're not going to not party. But that's what I got to do. And when I was in...
You were free.
Yeah. When I was in... I think I was still in high school when I went to my first 18 and up club.
Whoa. There's 18 and up clubs?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if they still have them, but...
but during that time, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it was in South Beach in Miami. So we got to walk around, but inside it was really cool. I felt like a big kid when I did that. We went to this place is shut down by now, and it's this probably just a different name, but it's the same concept. But this place was called Mecca, and that was my first ever coming of age experience that I feel like I really, really felt free and wow, this is. Because I never got to go to parties when I lived here.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
No house parties, barely even sleepovers. So this was just a huge, huge sudden freedom. But I feel like I handled it really well.
Yeah, yeah.
I was also very stuck in my mindset of fear. I can't do too much. I can't wild out too much. I got to keep it cool and calm and be responsible.
Do you feel like you would have been responsible if your father was still even a little bit more eased up? Or do you feel like because of that is what helped? because Miami's no joke. If you're not prepared, Miami will take you like on a ride if you're not prepared for that journey.
That's a good question. I've thought about that. I thought about like if I had stayed with my mom, and or maybe moved there sooner, I think I would be a little different. I think I would be a little more free-spirited like her and not as concerned with consequences maybe. But I think by the time that I did get out there, it had already been instilled in me to be responsible, be respectful of yourself and others. And then, of course, there's always God watching out for you, too. So there's a lot of things that I think were already on my shoulders that I was like, I can have fun, but not too much fun. I remember the first time I smoked weed out there, I was nervous because I was like, oh, my God, what am I going to tell my mom? And I called her, and I didn't think I was going to get punished because I'm in college by this time. It was my freshman year. But I told her, I was like, I'm going to be late coming home because I'm high right now. She's like, you're high? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, where are you? I'm like, I'm at my friend's house. We were studying. And she just starts laughing. She just starts laughing at me. Like, oh, okay, well, have fun. You know, that was so not what I expected. I expected to be grilled and to be like, what are you doing smoking right now? And like, well, why aren't you coming? Like, I expected a fight. So to hear that and hear her laughing on the other end of the phone, the relief I felt. And I gave my friend her phone back. And I was like, oh, we're okay. I can enjoy it now.
Can I ask, what made you tell your parents? What was was it just, you feel like it was the right thing to do? God, is that kind of like that sense of like, do the right thing, let mom know? So I know it's not too big to the whole story, but I think that's really cool.
It was more of like, I knew my mom was expecting me at a certain time.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to be there at that time. So I felt like I didn't want to lie. I wanted to tell her the truth. And which is really funny because in my dad's house, I lied a lot to try to cover my ass. But with mom, I don't think I felt that pressure to lie. I felt like I could be honest. And I just was with her. And because even though I wasn't sure how she was going to react, and even though I felt that fear, I was still honest with her about that. And I was rewarded for it, you know, and it taught me like honesty is the best policy. Communication is the best policy. I think if I had ever come to my dad that way when I was growing up, like, I'm going to be home late because I'm high. Ooh, very different story. Very, very different story. Would have been granted for a year.
Sure, yeah. How was college life? What was that experience? And where did you go?
I went to Florida International University. So it was like the campus that I stayed at mainly was in North Miami. So it wasn't deep into Miami, but it was pretty close. But I feel like I worked through it majority. I kind of just kept my nose to the
grindstone.
Is it grindstone or brimstone?
Oh, I think you're right. Is it brimstone? I think you might be right. I've always wondered what the actual saying was. I'm pretty sure you're right. We have to Google that.
Sarah, pull it up.
We need the receipts.
But anyway, I kept my nose to the ground and I just grinded it out because I went to school full time and I worked part/full time as well. I wasn't involved in a whole lot, but I did have some really good friends that I made my freshman year, and those were actually the girls that gave me my first toke, my first high experience. When we finished finals my freshman year, we went to the beach, and I had my first actual, like, real high experience. Like, everybody was moving so slow, and, like, it just felt so nice being on the beach, being on the water. I remember walking up to the edge of the shore and looking into the water, and it looked like there was cliffs underneath, and it was like the shallowest part, but it looked like I was standing over a canyon. It was really great. even thinking about it just gives me butterflies. But after that, sophomore, junior, senior, I was just working.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really get to experience a whole lot except for maybe going out once in a while, a few parties here and there. But I don't think I had the typical, like, nuclear college experience that you think.
What did you go to school for?
First 2 years, I didn't know what I wanted, and I was on track for more of a psychology. Then in one of my psychology classes, I decided I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to, but another classmate told me that her track was marketing and actually public relations. And that has a lot to do with marketing, but also has a lot to do with networking, communications, journalism. And that sounded like something that I would have really liked because I am a writer. I didn't explore that as much growing up, but when I got older, I got to play with that a lot. And I still play with that a lot to this day.
Well, what type of writing? Is it more?
I always did poetry for some reason when I was growing up. That was more my outlet. I would try to write songs or weird little poems. And I think I remember one time reciting something to you. I don't remember how it goes.
Yo, Yo. Wow, this is crazy. So you mentioned poetry. Did you ever do a poetry slam during college? Or?
I did actually. That's a really good point too. There was a kava bar not far from where I lived, and I had written a few poems. I had written a few things just about certain experiences, or I don't know, little rhymey things that I had come up with, and I was very new to it. But I went up there, I did my slam poetry, and I got my snaps, and it was really a validating experience. I was like, oh, this is just cool to do, even if people didn't like it or understand it. The point is to get it out there and release that energy in some way or shape or form. I think that's the whole point of art, whether you write, whether you paint, whatever you're doing, you need to have an outlet. And I think I remember a video where it's the difference between the artist and the depressed person is that the artist takes that emotion, takes that pain, takes that trauma, takes that whatever it is that they're feeling, good or bad, and they channel it into something that they create. Whereas the depressed person doesn't have a channel, doesn't have anywhere for that energy to go. So it stays within their system and it keeps cycling or building or, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. You mentioned that going through college was a chance for you to just kind of do your thing, right, get it done. But you also mentioned that marketing was kind of the world that you wanted to get into. Were you able to actually do that as a profession? Was that something you were able to do in Florida?
Yeah, so after I graduated, I had some dummy jobs here and there because everybody wants what quote unquote experience. I had to fake that on my resume. For the first few years, I really didn't do anything marketing related. One of my coworkers, she helped boost my resume a little bit, and she even gave me a little bit of practice with her own personal social media business so that I could say that I had done something. Then I got hired for a small social media marketing firm, and that was really cool because I got to work with a lot of local businesses and see how I think I got to really see how a small business ticks and how much time and investment is needed for a good small business to run. And then, of course, because I was working for essentially a small business as well, that I think some of the greatest ideas come from some of those, instead of it just being very run-of-the-mill or very typical, I want to say. We were always trying to come up with something new and creative, especially in the social media marketing space, right? We would do Facebook ads, Instagram. This was before TikTok, but we would play a little bit with LinkedIn. And we had really great graphic designers, and I could have an idea for one of the accounts that I had was the South Florida Symphony Orchestra. And so that was really cool. I had an idea of like a guitar look, or like or actually it was like a landscape, and then the reflection on the water, and then it being the landscape and the reflection looking like in the shape of a guitar. And all I had to do was explain that to her. She comes back with it so beautiful, and it's even better than I had pictured it. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting. It was really fun to be able to create some of those things together and have a really good team of just brilliant minds, and then someone also being able to execute it. It was really, really nice to do. I think there's not everybody, but some of my old coworkers still work for that company to this day, and they're doing really well. I'm proud of them.
But you moved on.
Yes.
Why?
Well, the problem with us working for a small business is you get a small paycheck. And I was ready. I think I was interested in something that I could grow into. And a lot of times that's something that's corporate. After that, I moved on to a digital marketing firm. And I was working as a copywriter for basically blogs, websites. I learned how to do SEO there. But I was getting a little burnt out with marketing and kind of sticking to this like 9-to-5 regime. So that's when I ended up switching career paths completely and becoming a flight attendant. And that was a little bit of mom's influence, because she's a flight attendant too.
Hey.
So she's like, you should do it. It's fun. You're young. You're single. You could travel the world. You have nothing holding you back. You should go. You should at least give it a shot. So I applied for a few different airlines, and then I actually got a job offer with United Airlines. This was end of 2018 that I finally got it. And I was based in San Francisco, but my home was in Florida.
Oh, I love that.
It would have been really great if I had been single, but I ended up dating someone right before I started.
Rough.
So I was, instead of getting to use my free days, I was traveling back home trying to build a relationship.
Yeah.
And that was hard. I still enjoyed it, but I think the thing is, I'm the type of person that I really like sleep. You cannot fuck with my sleep. So if I'm on call, let's say, right? Or if there's a day, especially when you're just starting in the airline industry, you're on call, and you can get called at any time in that 24-hour period. So if I get a call at 3 a.m. to report to the airport at 6 a.m., I gotta go. I gotta start getting up, getting ready, because I also now need to get a ride, like an Uber or something, to get to the airport on time. Sometimes they have what they call airport standby, so that you don't even know where you're going. You just know you're going to sit at the airport for 4 hours and see where they need you to be.
4 hours.
4 hours. So that could be, in that 4-hour period, they can call you onto any flight. In that case, you have to be prepared. You got to have a bikini and a winter coat, because you don't know where you're going. One day, I was on airport standby, and I got called to go to Zurich, Switzerland.
Switzerland?
Yeah, that was my very first ever international flight.
How long is that flight?
That's a great question. I think it was probably like 10 hours. I do remember, maybe more. I do remember we got a crew rest. So that's like a 2 to 3 hour break. So after everyone's fed and everybody's, kind of settled into their seats, half of the crew goes up into the plane where they have bunk beds, or not bunk beds, but like little
cabins.
beds.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And then rest for 2 or 3 hours, and then you switch, and then for the last maybe hour to 2, you're feeding everybody again because people are hungry, and then also preparing for landing, all that other good stuff.
I'm curious here, because flying is very different
from what I was
prior COVID.
Oh, yeah. That was one reason I did not go back.
That's why I was so curious. Yeah. What was that experience? Like, what did you go? Were you still in that career path during that kind of
No.
Oh, okay. So
I didn't go back, but I was also very afraid to. So I had stopped flying because of an injury about December of 2019. And I was about to go back right at the beginning of March. But then things, I started taking what they call company offered leave of absence. So they didn't need as many flight attendants as they had.
Oh,
So
okay.
they were basically just giving me a free month. By the time I was going to actually get back into flying, it had been named a pandemic, and they were suddenly having all of these new regulations. So now, even more company offered leave of absences were being given out to people, and I was like, you know what, I don't really want to work. It's fine. I don't need to do it. We'll just wait for this whole thing to blow over. Then it started becoming, okay, it's not a company offered leave of absence anymore. You're furloughed. So based off of seniority,
Yikes.
who are at the newest, we're going to let you go. You may get your job offer back. Well, first they tried offering people retirement, and then not enough people took that. So then they had to go with furlough. And you had to figure something out until you knew when you were going to go back to work. After the furlough, when they started calling people back, that's when they wanted people to be vaccinated. And I had tried going with a medical exemption first. It didn't go through. And I tried with a religious exemption after that, and it did not go through. And then they essentially terminated me, and I was in a case of there was several other people too who just didn't want to get vaccinated, but they still wanted to be able to fly. But I think there were a few airlines, United, Delta, and I think Southwest were some of the ones that were more strict about it. Other airlines were not making that a condition to work for them, because it wasn't even just flight attendants. It was grounds work, like baggage claim people, their ticket agents and stuff. So it wasn't people who really needed it, but it was like company wide. So by the time I come to my case with United, even though I'm already terminated, they're saying, okay, well, we may offer you your job back if you get the vaccine. I said, well, federally, they're not even requiring it anymore. So why are you guys? It's like, well, that's just our company policy now. So I said, they're like, we can offer you your job back if you agree to the vaccine. I said, no, no thanks. And they're like, all right, well, your termination is official. And they stamped it. And I had already had another job by then.
Of course,
but that's essentially on my record that I was terminated. I was working with...
oh, wait, is it one of those... If you want to drink water, please feel free. Is it one of those things where it's like in the system and any airline can see it? Or even if you try to not disclose it?
Yeah, so...
Oh, wow, that's wild.
So, well, they can see that I'm terminated, and they can see... I don't know if they could see why, but the flight attendants have a union, or most flight attendants, not all. I think certain airlines don't have that.
Sure.
But with our airline, we did have a union, and they were actually really helpful in helping me to try to overturn the termination, or at least have it not be a termination, but that I just left, that I decided to part ways with the company, because that does look a lot better on your record. And she did mention, in case you do ever want to become a flight attendant again, or work for another airline, or even try to get hired by United again, it looks a lot better. So we went that route, and after they had already decided to terminate me, we asked them to at least change the title, right, or the reason of parting or something. And so now it does say that that I decided to leave versus the other way around.
Looking at the world of being a flight attendant, but also looking at the world of being a marketer, what do you kind of like prefer? And after kind of seeing the two, you see what your mother has done for so long, you see kind of what you went to school for. Is there good and bad to both? Is there?
Yeah, I think there's good and bad to any job. Marketing, you're constantly trying to find new ways to capture your audience's attention. And I think a lot of the ways that you do that is learning about human psychology.
Right.
And then, of course, there's all these other tools as well. Who is your market? And they get down to a nitty-gritty of something called a user profile. So what is your one type of buyer? What is their life like? Are they like a single mom? Are they what do they do for fun? What do they like to eat? What do they like to watch? You know, there's a lot of patterns that I think companies are picking up on and seeing that, oh, this is a type E person, and this is the type of person that we're going to market after. And that's why they market their commercials on certain TV channels or on certain apps a certain way. You know, there's a lot of, goes very in depth. Being a flight attendant, it's a psychology, but in a very different way. You're more of a, my flight attendant friends are gonna not like me saying this, but you're kind of you wear a lot of different hats. In one aspect, you're a first responder because you have to know a lot of safety and security measures. There's a lot of things that they teach you when you're on the ground, when you're in the air, medical things that you need to know. So you have that responsibility. Right. But then you're also kind of acting like a server when you're, serving drinks and things like that, and assisting people. You're concierge because you're assisting people with their other flights, or maybe recommending certain areas in the city that they're going to be staying at. There's a lot of different things, and then of course sometimes like you are a janitor because you have to clean up vomit and spills and a lot of other bodily things. Sometimes it happens.
Yeah. But you're back.
I have to say this 1 second.
Please, yeah.
Please wear your shoes at all times on the plane. That is not water on the floor, especially near the bathroom. Wear your shoes.
Thanks.
Shoes. Not just socks. Shoes. Appreciate it. This is being a public service announcement.
Yo, get it tattooed. Wear your shoes. Aloha. We gotta have a mat that's the opposite, It says take off your shoes.
Yeah. Keep your shoes on.
Keep your shoes on. You are now back in IE though. Mm-hmm. It feels like there was such. Now, again, I feel like I'm a little biased here, right? It feels like your Florida time was so good. It feels like the experience in IE was not so much. What is that kind of balance there?
It's really. I was thinking about this when I got back about the cycles of my life and how I was going back and forth between California and Florida, and then I spent about 10 years here in the IE from like middle school to high school, and then about 10 years in Florida, and then now I'm back here again. And it wasn't anything about it being good or bad. I think it was just the way that the cookie crumbled with everything. Florida had given me a lot of really good experiences and stuff, but I think I was done growing there. Essentially, the reason I'm out here was because I had a breakup, and I also wasn't really growing in the job that I had there the way that I wanted to. And a lot of things were starting to feel very stagnant, and there was no more life that I could absorb from that space. I really could have gone anywhere. I could have done anything, but Dad actually offered me a job here, and I was like, you know what? I gave Mom's a shot. I gave her suggestion a shot, a fair one. So I got to give Dad's a shot too. So now I work with him in his hospice company. And he had been trying for a few years to pull me out here. But there was just things that I was still trying and still accomplishing out there. So when it finally fell down and I had really nowhere else that I wanted to go in Florida, he offered it to me one last time. I was like, you know what, let's give it a shot. I have nothing else to lose.
So, Gianina Marina Garcia, okay? You're a Filipino, Portuguese,
And Mexican.
Mexican,
Yeah.
American, where you have two families. One, based in Hawaii, Guadalajara, right?
Guadalajara is where my
Try to say it.
Mm-hmm.
I tried.
Jalisco, because Guadalajara is the city, so you could say Jalisco.
No, I want to Guadalajara. I want to hit that right, And you have this like really awesome culture. You mentioned that your great grandmother is a little cranky, but you gotta love it. Your grandmother.
I can't believe you wrote that down. That was your note.
Your grandmother is, she's your grandma. Even your grandfather, even though he passed, you get to really spend a lot of time with him. Created your mom, and one of the things I really like about that is that like her being the youngest and her perspective of like this kind of free spirit type of world, and even this type of personality that she has, and how your family has, your mother and your father has met, in Hawaii, and your father's prior service military, and that kind of created you and your personality, where you have this balance of like this sternness and this I think the word I would like to use, just respectful, but also like a little bit of like that kind of like anarchy. Like you want a little bit of just that flavor and taste of the world. Yeah. You cannot be put in a box. You want to be set free. You grow up with like the best childhood you could ask for. Being with your father and being able to wrestle with him and have this cool dynamic. Being with your mother as well. You were able to travel and get to see Florida and be back at home. But when things kind of got stable, you felt like there was a lot of control that your family was trying to have like on you, but you didn't really let it stop you. You still found really awesome friends. You have Brianna, right? You were able to really connect with, and just her and her personality, and you have Mrs. Pacheco, her and her two kids that you were able to mentor and tutor. You even have like your brothers who drive you crazy, but they're still there. They're doing their thing. There's people that you can lean on as well. But friends, school, hanging out, looking cute, doing what you had to do with your girls. But then the kind of world rug gets pulled under you at one moment in time, and you transition to Florida, and what could be kind of the end of the road becomes like this whole new journey where you fully self-discover like who you are, and what the possibilities that you can have. You understand the roots that your father has instilled, as though it wasn't the best implementation, the lessons was still viable to at least allow you to have free time, but respectfully, making new friends like Emily, finishing high school, getting into your career in marketing, growing through the marketing world, progressing from like your marketing world into digital marketing with like, and really cool thing, just the side note on your marketing thing I really like that you mentioned was that you worked with small businesses. You were able to see kind of what the people of kind of Floridians, right, have built and created, and you help at least literally put them in positions to really help them become better businesses, but also got to work with really talented people like graphic designers to see kind of your imagination, your world come true. But knowing that there was still more to grow, and learning a little more from your mother, you transition into the flight attendant world and get to experience that as well, and interacting with new people. And again, this like people who are trying to control you. He's like, no. I've been through this before. I'm going to still be me. I'm going to be free. And you choose to do what's best for you. And you do it in such a Gianina way, right? Where you do it respectfully. You do it by the book. But look, at the end of the day, this is the line I'm going to cross. And you stay true to what your principles are and your standards. And it has now put you in a position where you get the opportunity, but also it gives you a chance to try to remend something with your father. I imagine you've done that over the last 10 years, but it gives you a chance to be able to kind of connect with him now. And now you're on a kind of a new journey, building a small business into something so much more. Looking back at your life, do you have any regrets? Would you change any of it?
Yeah, there's a few things. I would have definitely enjoyed my youth, and I'm still in my youth, but my younger youth, like in college. I really do wish I had enjoyed that and let loose a little bit more. But I was still coming out of that very strict household, so I was slowly starting to spread my wings. I think I enjoy life a lot more now, and I don't know if that's just because it's I'm gonna have fun, or God help me, or just because I think maybe I've tried maybe doing things the very by the book way and by the very diligent, hardworking way, and it hasn't proven to be as fruitful as I thought it would be. So now I have a little bit more of a balance between the two. I work, and when I work hard, but I also don't let it dictate my life anymore. I have my goals and I have my dreams and the things that I want to accomplish, but my mindset now on how to get those things are very I believe that I'm not gonna get there by clawing and grasping and digging through the mud. I really believe that I just need to show up, and I need to have the best possible attitude, and yes, work on my craft and continue to teach myself, continue to learn, but I don't need to scrounge. I can achieve my goals and my dreams because it's just going to come to me. It's just going to unfold before me.
You segued perfectly into this question. Like, literally, you couldn't have landed better. What is the dream? What is your goal? Like, you saw what you went through, right? You kind of re-experienced it. What do you want out of life? What are you fighting for? Not just what do you want for yourself, but what do you kind of want to leave behind? What value do you want to bring to the world?
So, we're in 2023 now. In the beginning of 2022, I did not know the answer to that question. Still did not know what I wanted to do, what I wanted from life. I was kind of letting my boyfriend at the time tell me what we were going to do, or, figure, like we were going to figure something out. We were going to make something work. But I didn't have any drive or desires for anything specifically. I took shrooms for the first time in June of 2022, and I really feel like that just kicked me off into a whole new echelon of my life and my perspective and the way that I think and the way that I work and the way that I live life now. It made me slough off all the old ways of thinking, the old ways of being, and it showed me where I want to be. So that first day, that first mushroom trip that I had, I ended up in a garden. And I had already been smiling the entire day, but in the garden, I had a friend who was, she was my guide, but she let me kind of explore on my own for a little bit. And I sat and I asked the question. I said, where do I go? What do I do? And I had sat down and I had closed my eyes. And then when I opened them, I see the garden and I see all this beauty and this life around me. And the sun was shining and there were butterflies everywhere. And I said, oh, this is what I want. This is exactly what I want for my life. So now my goal is to have a garden, have a nursery. I'm big on herbal and natural healing, emotional and physical. And so I want to be able to cultivate all of those things, whether it's in oils or herbal mixes or teas and things like that, and be able to provide things that people can really use to help heal themselves. But then also be in that kind of environment that I was in. Be in a very safe, natural, beautiful space that can just provide respite and peace. And it gives me that same thing that a lot of people go to church for.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me that.
The breath.
Yeah.
Yeah. The release. Yo, that's so good.
Mm-hmm.
And my final question before we move out of this world. God forbid, if this is it, and your children, great grandkids, some friends, family, someone pulls this up 100 years from now, what message would you want them to leave to them? What would you want your legacy to be, and what advice could you give them on their journey of their life?
I think the thing that's coming up in my head right now is love yourself. Love yourself more than anyone. Because no one is gonna be your harshest critic, but I also don't think anyone is gonna love you more than you love yourself. And that's something that I've been learning, because going back to our conversation of my relationship with what love was, I had to relearn all of that and understand my own value, because I didn't think that I really had that, or no one at least taught me that, right? That I had value and that I had I had to hold myself to a certain standard. And it's hard to learn. It's really hard to learn to love yourself, because you not only know all of your own flaws, but you know all of the other things that people have told you. You hold those things for some reason. Let all that go, because that's just someone else's pain that is being projected onto you. So love yourself and find things to love about yourself. You have to have patience with yourself. In the beginning, when you're starting to learn to love yourself, it's going to be very difficult. There might be things that keep coming up, and you're going to chastise yourself over. You're like, oh, why do I do this? Or why do I continue to do that? I wish I wasn't this way. And then eventually, when you continue to give yourself that grace, those things might still pop up, but then you'll find you and this happened to me the other day, you have the other side of the voice that is now nicer and calmer. I said, well, that's okay. We're still growing and we're still learning and we're figuring out how to move in the world. But at least there are things that I know that I do like about myself. I like that I can get along with so many different types of people, and that I like that I'm very accepting of people. I like that I dance almost everywhere that I go. I like that I have my own special relationship with God now. And it's not the same that I was raised with, but it's a really, really tight one. And I'm grateful that coming back here has kind of opened that doorway. I really like my own style that I have now, because I didn't really have one before. I like the way that I learn things And then there's a lot of different ways that I learn. I learn through watching, but I also learn through trial and error. And I love the way that I can romanticize my life and find the moments, the serendipitous moments, and hold on to those and just be so grateful for them.
I love what you mentioned. The advice you gave was love yourself more than anyone else. Mm. It's like literally full circle. How do people connect with you? Where can people follow you? Like how can people just learn more about you, or I don't know, where's your plugs?
You could follow me on IG. I'm at Glorious Chaos with 2 S's at the end. That's an homage to Eris from Sinbad. Do you remember that movie?
Yo, yeah.
But it's cow. I think it's also there's a lot. It's also because of what nature is and how connected I am to it. It is pretty much chaos when life is growing, and if it's untended, it is pretty much just nature is wild.
Nature and nurture, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it is beautiful and it's glorious, But there's but I don't have that many friends out here yet. I mean, I got you and I got a few other friends, but I'm still making friends out here. So let's hang out like in person.
Link up.
Mm-hmm.
Link up.
Yeah.
We have one final segment. You will probably want to drink water for this. This is the deep question section. Thank you. Oh shoot! I need to grab my clipboard here. Ooh. Okay. All right. So it's 5 questions. Okay.
Is it like rapid fire answer?
No. Dig deep if you like. Deep questions. But these were chosen by Sarah. So throughout the entire show, she's been looking at some pieces of what she might go well with what you've been saying. So no specific order, but I'm gonna kind of preview some of them. But in 5 words, describe how you think others perceive you.
I think that depends on who you ask.
Oh, we want to know what the enemies think too, so.
I think one of them would definitely be it's a great question. How do other people perceive me? And you know what? That's actually something that I struggle with because I often worry about how people perceive me. Or maybe not worry, but I think I want people to like me or accept me. Slowly getting away from that. But for the most part, I think I put up an acceptable or like a cookie cutter version of myself. And then once after I feel comfortable or once I get more interested in them,
sure,
then I feel safe in what I can actually allow from my authentic self to show.
It's kind of like someone said that sometimes when you first interact with people, you put up a mirror. You kind of reflect what you think the person wants to see, which is most likely themselves.
Yeah.
But if you look deep, right, or you open up the mirror, right, you start really understanding who you're talking to. Move it away. Say, hey, someone's standing behind this,
Yeah.
Get to be able to show who you are. So it's interesting. So it seems like one of them is you want to be, I don't want to call it agreeable, but essentially in a way you want people to feel like comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing. I want that other person to feel comfortable so that I can feel comfortable. And then we can get comfortable. But if let's say maybe one of my best friends, if you were to ask them and what 5 words they might describe me as, it'd be a very different story. So I know, like, they think I'm beautiful and very caring and smiley and lively and sexy. Those are the things that I've heard them tell me, or like felt that they feel about me. If you ask my mom, this is gonna be very different 5 words.
Then the next question. If there is one thing that others still don't understand about you, what is it?
I don't show all my cards. There's a lot that goes on in here, and it's almost never quiet, even if I am. And so a lot of times I'm reading or I'm putting other puzzle pieces together about people, and yeah, a lot of it is maybe assumption, but I think it's more of just like storing and logging, and maybe trying to, not so much in a way of judgment, but trying to understand someone.
Who is your greatest teacher and why?
My greatest teacher. I don't really like this, that he is my greatest teacher, but he really was. My ex-boyfriend was probably my greatest teacher for a lot of different reasons. He had a very old soul way about him. So he kind of taught me a lot about what it is to have goals and not just live for tomorrow, but to live for a greater future, and how, like, maybe even leave a legacy. But he also taught me tough lessons too. Like, you can't always trust the people that you love and that say they love you. You can't always give all of your energy to someone. You have to save some of that for yourself. You have to give back to yourself. And you can't, if someone isn't going to accept you for who you are, then you can't make them.
It's almost like it's time to go. What are the top 5 qualities you appreciate in a person?
Communication is huge. I think communication is so underrated.
Communication how? Words? Feelings?
Feelings,
language,
emotions,
words,
I
tonality?
think. Like, if someone is... I think I'm really good at feeling someone's vibe. And if I feel like something's wrong, but they're not telling me what's wrong, I'm like, okay, am I going to have to pull it out of you? So communication is big. If there's something going on, let me know. Or just, like, let's talk about it. I'm a very open and understanding person, so I'm not going to just outright say, oh, there's no reason to feel like that. I want to understand. So another thing is humor. I adore people who can just, whether it's dark humor or like silly dad jokes, like let's just laugh. Life is meant for joy and laughter. People who are kind, gotta appreciate that. And a lot of times the kindest people have gone through some of the hardest trials of life. So they know that they have to spread that energy and that love out.
The givers.
Intelligence. I think and not just book smart, but maybe more of like a well-rounded intelligence.
Street smart.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah.
A little bit of everything.
Sure.
Yeah. That's 4, right?
That's 5.
That's 5?
Mm.
Okay, there we go.
Am I right? I think it's 5. Final question. What experience scared you but made you a better person? Sarah's pulling out the heavy punches today.
I'm trying to remember a point where I was really, really scared. Does the fear of God count?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I remember watching some of those movies about the rapture and the things that happen to those who were left behind, and everything that's going to happen, that they say is going to happen after, like in the book of Revelations, pretty much, or like even if you died before that and you go to hell, like that put the fear in me, and it maybe not so much to like be super invested into one religion, but enough to keep me walking straight and do right by people, and always, and now I refer to it as karma. Karma always comes back, and God doesn't like ugly.
One, I want to say thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This is really cool. I'm really grateful that we were able to hear your story, and I've learned a lot. If I had to put like one word to try and describe what I kind of gained, but it's maybe not doesn't make a lot of sense. But I kind of learned trust. It's almost like this weird scenario that like you kind of trusted yourself, or trusted like, hey, it's gonna get better. Like it's always, there's like something down the road that's gonna constantly, whether it be you saving yourself, but it's just like this this innate feeling, like this perseverance that you have. It was really awesome. I don't know if there was like the fear of the future, right? Because as you mentioned, kind of the final question, that outside of God, of someone watching you and the decisions that you're making. But it was really cool to kind of see the way you trusted yourself in some of the decisions that you made. And hey, tomorrow will come, and I'm going to make the best out of tomorrow. And you continue progressing down the days. And it was just really awesome to see. One of the things, though, that I do want to kind of highlight is we have a painting, right, that you chose. And this painting was made by Sarah.
Oh, great job, Sarah.
And we donate the painting to you, but you chose this painting. So essentially it's be on our kind of like this. And
I thought this was one that just goes up on the wall.
No,
I get to take this home?
Yeah, if you want to. But we put it up here. We get it posted on there. And we kind of use it as our thing. But we'll tell you after the show why we do it. But one of the things I think is really cool is, I guess I'll kind of disclose something. At one point in time, it was even in high school, I think I asked her on a date, Gianina. It was a long time ago. And it's crazy that this scenario that we played out now, of kind of now understanding a little bit more about like who you are and where you've come and how hard you work to get to where you are. And now like my wife gets to be able to meet someone who was really dear to me. And it was just the scenarios that's going on. And even then I didn't know like half the stuff that you were going through. And so it's kind of cool where you get to read, like, 10 years come by, where you get to retouch some of the individuals that you met with in a long periods of time. And I think it's not easy to share your story, but I really appreciate you had the chance to share yours. And for me to be able to learn more about you as a friend, that means a lot. And so this painting, I don't know why you chose it, but is there anything specific like why you chose it?
There was a few things. So I really liked that it reminded me kind of these shapes here reminded me of, and even the outlines too, of like tiles. And a lot of times like garden tiles and like certain things like that. Clearly I'm a flower child.
Wow.
And then I think also the purples, blues, and greens I've been very attracted to lately. I think I think I'm just more drawn to the I don't know why they feel like masculine colors. Yeah, like to me, like yellow, orange, and red. For some reason, they feel like feminine. So blues, greens, and purples always felt masculine to me. And I always had this thing where it's like, yeah, the the blues were always with either red or pink, and then the green was always with yellow, and then purple was always with orange. Don't know why I matched my color. I was a matchmaker for my colors, but that's what I always did.
And we ask this question in every show, which is the final question before we go. But before we go into there, is there anyone else you want to touch base who made a really big influence, or any stories or anything that we may have forgotten we're able to touch on?
It wasn't so much when I was growing up. We still had so my sister from mom's side, we're 2 years apart. She grew up with her dad, I grew up with mine. So we didn't always have the closest relationship. But now she is a huge part of where I'm going next. And we call each other almost every day, supporting each other in whatever ways we can. Always call each other Grand Rising Queen. And it's so nice to have someone who knows me from like way back when, but is also so close to me now. And I'm really excited for us because I feel like we're gonna accomplish a lot together, and we're just gonna always continue to cheer each other on.
Well, then the final question.
I thought that was the final question.
No,
like 7 final questions.
Sorry, my bad, girl. This is actually the final question. My apologies. What is the meaning of life?
To be happy.
Well, then, to everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for coming through. Have peace, love, happiness, even after death. Good night, guys.